got the fam, I got the keys, I get the work. I am the man, you know what I'm saying? So leave it to me, cause I get it first. Yeah, woo, I've been going all day, man. Same plan, can't change that. Till I'm right around, whole squad sitting back, chilling in the Maybach. Yeah, only as deep as your roots go. I don't do corny like fructose. If you got the drummer, that's word to my mama. I'll cover you up like a toast. I was last in my past, now you see I'm the one. They say work, never work. If you work and it's fun, we on a winning team. On top where you find us, we can do anything. Non-stop till our time's up. We on a winning team. On top where you find us, we can do anything. Non-stop till our time's up. We can do, ayy, we coming up from the dirt, ayy. They trying to get us to fall, ayy. I don't even gotta flex now, boy. It's only win by default, ayy. Taking off with the ring, ain't nothing left, man. We the kings, ran with the team, ran with the dream, ran with the one fan in the seats, ayy. I pay my dues, check the receipt. Looking at you, you already peaked. Way back then. You can't follow with my tracks, man. Last in my past, now you see I'm the one. They say work, never work. If you work and it's fun, we on a winning team. On top where you find us, we can do anything. Non-stop till our time's up. We on a winning team. On top where you find us, we can do anything. Non-stop till our time's up. We on a winning team. On top where you find us, we can do anything. Non-stop till our time's up. We on a winning team. On top where you find us, we can do anything. Non-stop till our time's up.
We got big-time problems with that motor, buddy. Hey, just between you and me, the idea is to avoid the other cars. Congratulations! You just set the sport back 30 years with that move. That move will put you in the Hall of Shame. You keep doing stuff like that and we're going to lose our sponsor. Looks like that's it for us today. Now I know why you got canned by your old team. It's over. We can't fix that damage.
Looks like your car is toast. You'll need a tow back to pit lane. Press and hold your reset button and we'll come and get you.
A cathedral of motorsport and a yard of bricks, ready to greet the drivers aiming to keep their championship hopes alive. With that, we welcome you to the virtual Indianapolis Motor Speedway and the site of the second race in the round of 12 for Sunday Night NASCAR right here on the KBueno Racing Network. Ready to get things started on our first broadcast of Sunday Night NASCAR in the DBR Cup Series, where alongside Francisco Bacchial in the booth, my name is Kenneth Bueno. And Francisco, the playoffs are getting to its height in this series. 12 drivers still eligible, but this race can change the climate at a venue especially so infamous for doing just that.
Happy to bring the broadcast to all of our viewers tonight with you, Kenneth. Thank you for having me here. But yeah, the playoffs are here, and it's an insane battle for the cutoff, where we were just talking about this before we went live. There are 4 drivers separated by 1 point at the cutoff, and who knows what can happen at Indianapolis. This race can be a wild card because of the package and the fact that you have to drive this track completely different than any other track because it's a unique shape and such a historic venue too. So a win or a good run here goes a lot, not only to one's playoff hope, but to one's career.
Yeah, there's so much importance when you go to a track, especially such as the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, of course, memorizing the Indianapolis 500, the Brickyard 400, which has been ran here for so many years on the NASCAR side of things, and so many moments, so many things that go around this racetrack specifically, and especially now that this is going to be in a playoff situation. Usually in the real life NASCAR side, you won't see any sort of Indianapolis running through the playoffs. You usually see it during the regular season, but now that we're seeing this play into this championship factor so much, but what's going to be that big note to carry on through as we walk in through tonight, knowing that each driver that are contending in this round of 12 and now have to execute at a track that's very difficult and a track that can really change things all too much, like I mentioned before.
Yeah, these guys are going to be looking after their backs, making sure they can keep their cars clean for the end of the race, because that's where the points are handed out. So one of the more important things that each driver is probably going to be looking forward to having to do as far as their race strategy is keep track position. Track position is going to matter. The draft is going to be existing here today, but you need the track position because it's all too valuable. It's hard to pass, and it's just going to be a battle of who can stay up front, and the person who's able to do that the best will most likely come out with a win.
Well, before we get going here, about 50 seconds left in the qualifying session before we get to gridding. We'll just take a little more info about what this track is all about. Of course, no real introduction, but we'll take it anyway with our KBRN Track Map with images provided by Google Earth. Going to take away all the way to Speedway, Indiana, and the big 2.5-mile oval of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Track opened in 1909. Lots of history to be made and lots of history already from this track already at a banking at about 9.2 degrees in the turns. Obviously, it is completely flat through the front straightaway and the back straightaway. That's also something to know here, Francisco. These corners are very different from what we see at the likes of the other tracks on the 1.5 miles and pretty much any other oval we see on the NASCAR side of things. Very, very flat corners compared to a lot of the other tracks, and very, very long straights, which is definitely going to pose a big challenge to these high downforce cars here tonight. We're going to take a look at the point standings. This is your run through of top to bottom and 1 through 10. There are still 2 drivers from the round of 12. Randy Spivey leads this point standings in the playoffs, and there's Thomas Neal, Chad Biesinger with 4 points behind, and Chris Cloud, who's in 4th right now. This is kind of the main battle we're seeing for the top 4 spots, but you see a little bit further behind, tied for 7th and tied for 9th. 2 drivers, actually Charles Eaton, Matthew Gaskins for 7th, Dalton Mobley, and Dean Weeks for that 9th spot. There's still a lot of battles. You mentioned, Francisco, about a couple of cars, a couple of drivers moving in, trying to get into the round of 12. And of course, those drivers sitting on the bubble. As the drivers now are sitting on the grid right behind the iRacing official pace car, we'll take a look at your starting grid, see where your favorite driver and every other driver will be starting here from the racing cathedral and the racing capital of the world. Thomas Gold with pole at 48.141. He will start on the front row right alongside the number 74 of Timothy Trowbridge.
Going back to the second row, you see Ryan Samuelson. He qualified in the 3rd position, and right alongside him, the 62 of Nate DeFayette.
In row 3, David Love in the number 70 with a 48.999. He'll start in this top 5. Right alongside him, the number 57 of Joshua O. Johnson in 6th.
Looking back at the fourth row, you see Jeff Carson, almost a second already separating pole position from the rest of the lap time. So different approaches as far as setup you've been able to notice. And then right next to him, Mark Figueroa.
Matthew Gaskins in the 79 will start tonight from 9th position. Barrett Coffey will also be in this 10th spot. That'll be row number 5. We'll take a look a little bit further back in this field, and we'll scroll through all the other drivers who will start this race. Lauren Jones, Charles Eaton, Chad Biesinger, who we just mentioned in the point standings, Chad Sanner, Tom McGee, Chris Cloud, Joseph Lester, Dean Weeks, Saba Corns, or Brendan Biesinger, who's also there as well, Kevin O'Rourke, Nicholas Breidenbach as well, William Fink, Randy Spivey. You can see the rest of the grid as we continue to scroll through. Lots of drivers here in for tonight's event. We did have a practice session at about 1 hour and 20 minutes, so we had a lot of time, Francisco, to really look at the drivers here on the grid and look at the drivers that we were kind of expecting to see, at least in terms of lap times and just how they were working their way around this racetrack. And before we go green here, your thoughts on what we're going to see on our first broadcast for Sunday Night NASCAR?
Well, you just said it. It's our first broadcast, so I at least have no expectations. I have no idea what we're in store for today, but I'm just hoping that we're able to have a good race. We know that it's a playoff race, so tensions are high. People are going to be trying to make sure that they can keep their cars clean. We're going to be seeing different approaches by the playoff drivers, some maybe being a bit more aggressive, others being a bit more conservative, trying to make sure that they can stick around for the end, others needing the points, trying to get them all in one corner. So we'll see how those two different strategies combine to make for a race, and we have yet to see that at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, so it's going to be an interesting one to say the least.
It's definitely going to be interesting, and you're looking at the interesting grid up in here. There are 4 Mustangs, right? In row number 1, row number 2, all Fords before you get to 2 straight Camaros are right on row number 3. And those 2, and at least these 4, all 6, and everybody else will be lining up on this grid. Thomas Gold will be your post sitter, right alongside the number 74 machine. That is Trowbridge. These drivers will get around. Obviously, just what I mentioned, just how interesting this track is. Those little corners right in beneath these little straights, the short chutes in between each and every corner, turns 1 and 2, and down into 3 and 4. It is the same deal. Not too much banking. Everyone's going to be easily going all the way to that white line, but you got to be careful. You touch that curb, you touch the grass a little bit, could spell a disastrous ending to your night. 80 laps here, half of what we run in the NASCAR Cup Series. Pace car has made its way to the left side, and the safety down on pit road. The number 70 of Chris Gold will be the one that'll be leading this field to the green flag. We are up and away for Sunday Night NASCAR on the KBueno Racing Network.
So far, so good through 1 and 2. We see a couple guys blinking and whatnot, but no incidents as far as we can see. We see double file, even 3 wide further in the back. But the front couple cars, you see actually there is going to be a contest for that lead, but immediately he backs off. I believe that is the 74 of Tobridge. He immediately backed off, realizing lap 1, maybe it's not the time to push the issue. So your pole sitter, Gold, is going to come around to lead this first lap of the race, and you see quickly everybody trying to get single file, because with this package, you do not want to be side by side on these long straightaways. You just lose so much time. So everybody trying to get single file, making sure that they don't lose as much time as they have to.
Top 4 at a breakaway. You're watching Gold, Trowbridge, Samuelson, and Love all breaking away for the 5th place car of Defayette, who's in challenge with Matthew Gaskins in the number 79. They're in a little 2-car stretch as well before you get to everybody else. The rest of this field, there's somebody around there in the back, somebody up to the outside wall, and a pretty big incident on lap number 2 will cause the first yellow of the evening with the number 22 Randy Spivey around. That is playoff points leader, the 14 of Kavaja Holt. He's in there as well. You saw one driver there in that mix as well, making their way. And those are some of the cars involved in our first yellow of the evening, right off of turn number 2. It started a little bit further up the road where these drivers are getting wrong. This is from the 22 of Randy Spivey, who was working his way. And you can see him there off of the turn number 2, right into the 10 as some of the cars up there were getting collected. And you see they're getting tagged along the outside wall. Some of the drivers there, the 14 with a huge hit. That was Kavaja Holt in there. And our first yellow starts.
It's a bit unfortunate, as you mentioned. The playoff points leader, Randy Spivey, was involved in that incident. You saw he got into the back of that one car there, and then he was sort of checking up, making sure that nothing else came about that, and then the other cars just seemed to be flying through, trying to get the spots while everybody was going a little bit slow, and there was some slight contact, and that was just enough to unsettle the car and spin them around. So unfortunate for it to happen this early in the race, but the good thing is that it did happen early in the race. That way he has the rest of this race to be able to recover, and it could only get better from here.
And already some drivers involved. And they have some damage, so at least it is early on in this race. It's better, of course, that you just said, to make those mistakes early in this race as opposed to making them all the way later, where kind of picking your way back up and digging yourself out of that hole is a much more difficult and really cannot be done by the time the checkered flag comes out. See a couple drivers down pit road. That was led, that little line there, by Matthew Gaskins, who found his way. That's number 79. Who made his way down to pit road, so he succeeds his spot down into the 5th position. He'll be 12th at the line, losing spot still because he's going to make his stop to pit road. Open setups here in this series, Francisco, and not something we usually see on the KBueno Racing Network. We usually see a lot of the series that we run are usually at the fixed setup side. I think the only real league that we've covered that featured open setups was the Wall Stadium iRacing League, but that's a whole different league in its own right, considering the fact that it was short track focused and it's more legend cars, modifieds, as opposed to full-on NASCAR Cup Series cars that we're seeing here tonight.
Yeah, that opens up a new avenue that we normally do not see, and that's what can these guys do as far as setups. When we normally cover races, it's a fixed setup, so it comes down to the driver mainly, and a couple of key adjustments with the brake bias, steering ratios, and the offset. With the open setup available, that means you can adjust whatever you want. Whatever you can adjust and it's legal, you can go ahead and do it. So all these guys have a completely different setup, most likely. But I've never really been in an actual event with open setup, so maybe there's a setup that teammates are sharing that are probably helping with lap times or helping the long run, helping the short run. You know, those things are probably discussed between the teammates. Everybody's in their own little group, probably discussing those very things, talking about the information. So as this race continues, we'll see people be able to make adjustments to their cars, be able to work on it, and see if they can make the cars better, which is something we haven't seen. So it's going to be interesting, because maybe somebody who's in the top 5 right now, maybe we'll see them struggling later in the race because they either aren't able to keep up with the racetrack, or the adjustments that they're making is just not working at the time they're making them. So that's going to be an interesting aspect, and we won't know until it happens. So I'm excited to see what happens as this race continues to progress, kind of.
And And I mean, you mentioned it right there. It opens a big avenue for every other driver. I mean, I know some drivers aren't necessarily familiar and they're not necessarily proficient with open setups. I know some drivers aren't necessarily used to having open setups. They're not really sure what to do in terms of changing setups and making their car feel better throughout certain types of runs, whether it be the short run, the long run, or in between anywhere on this racetrack, or where they can be their best in terms of handling and performance when you mix that together. So it is an interesting mix. It is an interesting hybrid of trying to make sure you're not only fast, but you're also very comfortable into what your car can do, and you're comfortable that your car can handle the best way it can while also maintaining some of that speed. And so there goes that conversation about give and take. How much are you willing to sacrifice for a little bit more speed? Are you willing to be a little more uncomfortable with the car in order to gain some power, in order to gain some advantage to some part of this racetrack? Of course, with these long straights, you really have to adjust, because if you're only good in the corners, you're not good down the straights, it could pose a big risk for your track position. And you did say track position will be key once we go through this race. It probably will matter a little bit more in this race as opposed to right now with our first yellow at lap number 2. We're going to get a restart on lap number 6. So still a long way to go until we get to lap number 80 and the finale and the checkered flag for this race, until we crown a winner here in the DBR Cup Series in the Sunday night NASCAR. You see them off of turn number 4. They're going to make their way through the short shootout in 3 and 4. They'll make their way down the long front straightaway all the way down to the yard of bricks, where the pace car will find itself on a pit road, and the field of roaring engines will find their way barreling into turn number 1. Pace car will make its left all the way down a pit road, and again, the 2 leaders who started this race will be the 2 leaders to restart this field on lap number 6. Gold with the advantage, everybody out behind, and we're back under green from Indy.
A pretty clean getaway up in the front. You see everybody trying to get single file. That just goes to show how crucial these guys think being single file is going to be, because as I previously mentioned, with this package, with that big spoiler you see, the lower horsepower that they run here, if you're side by side, you easily lose multiple tenths of a second on the straightaway, and you're vulnerable to being attacked. You see they're side by side actually right there, but you're just going to see those 2 cars on the outside are much better. Actually, it's going to give them the spot on the inside, but normally 2 cars or 3 cars, whatever it is, running in a line, it's just so much faster than the 1 car trying to battle side by side, which they are doing so right now in turn 4 coming onto the start-finish line, and I believe they settled that one out really quickly, realizing the position they were in. But another lap complete under green, clean restart for the most part. You see the entire field for the most part is single file.
See, Joseph Lester fell that spot down to the number 75 of Charles Dean. He's now under pressure from the 47 of Tom McGee. Got passed by Seba Corns and Lauren Jones in the number 11. They both got by onto the inside on the entrance of turn number 1. Meanwhile, though, it is a larger gap than what we saw on that initial start, Francisco. 1.1 seconds between Gold and Trowbridge. So that's the largest we've seen the lead so far tonight. Of course, they didn't go as many laps under the green flag as we probably presumed them to be in terms of that initial start, but so far Gold is looking strong. The top 2 kind of at a separation, but not too much of a breakaway when we look back to 5th place David Love and Joshua Johnson is rounding out in 6th.
Yeah, I don't know if you picked that up, but in turn 4, that 74 just barely clipped that apron, and it really got him loose, and he lost a little bit of time there. He lost almost half a second that last lap to Gold, your race leader. So obviously what Gold's intention is just get out there, make sure nobody has your draft. You can just run your pace. That's obviously ideal, and it's tough to break the draft, but I believe with the gap he has now, he's probably fine, and he can just keep pushing, and the guy in second is just going to be training everybody behind. Everybody's just going to have this big hole being punched, and they can just catch right up to him, which is why you don't see much separation from second on back, because they're just in this big hole of air that's being punched by them. So we'll see how this goes as the laps continue to tick away. We see another lap under green, and I believe the gap this time, once the timing and scoring update, you see there, Trowbridge actually lost another 0.2 of a second. So Gold is making sure he gets out and does not give a draft to anybody else.
It's now about 1.583 the last time by, or at least as the most recent scoring has just showed us. So it is growing. It was about 1.1 just a couple of laps prior, and now it continues to grow throughout this longer run. We're looking at the battle, though, keeping our eyes peeled on this battle from basically 9th on back to the top 10, top 15. You're looking at a couple drivers worthy of note. Obviously saw Joseph Lester fall back in this group. Lauren Jones, the 47 to Tom McGee. They have also found their way into this mix. Kevin Work, Chad San are also here as well. So they are obviously single file, but looking to make some sort of move. And you see up the road just a little bit. There was a move down to the inside. Here's another move for that 5th spot. That's Joshua Johnson in the number 57. He gets under Defiant for P number 4 as the caution waves at lap number 10. We'll see what might have transpired between the back of this field. Seems as though we got a couple cars involved, and there's a big pile up down the front straightaway involving Jeff Carson, Steve Giberson, actually, excuse me. The car's just slowing down, trying to get around. There's the 9 trying to recruit Carson. We'll take a replay. That's exactly what might have happened between here and then. We'll try to look at the best way we can up to the front straightaway. You see him going around. Not sure where it started.
Yeah, it looks a bit odd.
It's not really allowing us. Right there, just getting involved. The 9 car, Carson, he's now down behind the pace car, but you probably assume they're going to make their way down pit road. There's Gold in the number 97 making his run to the lead. That lead has already evaporated as now that yellow flag really easily bunches everyone up. It's definitely going to take us a while, Francisco, to at least get used to some of these names around here. We're not definitely used to, obviously, a lot of these people in the Sunday Night NASCAR League. So, obviously, it's going to take a little bit for us to kind of get grouped with every single one of the drivers' names in terms of which drivers who and what they usually align themselves with. So, obviously, pardon us if we make any sort of mistake up here in the broadcast booth when it comes to that regard. But I think right now, just trying to get our feet a little wet in terms of what we're seeing from Sunday Night NASCAR. Just a quick reminder that Sunday Night NASCAR coverage in the DBR Cup Series on the KBueno Racing Network is brought to you by On Target Performance Group. On Target Performance Group delivers a more accurate view of the cost of your products, services, processes, and customers within the manufacturing, retail, and logistics industries. They specialize in getting reliable and accurate cost improvement recommendations to improve your profits. You can visit their website at ontargetpg.com or contact them by phone at 866-933-8730. On Target Performance Group. Know your costs, know your profits. So Francisco, already 2 short yellows before we've had just a small green flag stint before we kind of had any sort of racing. It tends to be a lot of separation, not really much pack racing, and I know that we're usually used to seeing a lot of the pack racing in terms of, you know, the high downforce package and the low horsepower that we see with these NASCAR Cup Series machines. Are you expecting somewhat of pack racing to kind of file in as soon as we have another restart? Or do you think the Gold in the 97, or you think the top 4 or 5 might start to break away like we've seen so far?
I mean, at the front, it's probably going to be exactly what we've seen, and in the middle of the field, it's probably going to be exactly what we've seen. To this point, the package is doing exactly what I thought it would for Indianapolis. It's tough here to run side by side and not lose time, which is why we've seen many people, if they're going to be side by side, usually one's going to give up a place or just whatever they do to settle it out quickly. One of them just doesn't want to be side by side, and so they'll rather lose the spot and just stay single file and not lose that time because it's too valuable under green here to be running side by side, especially this early. So I think what we're seeing is what we're going to continue to see throughout the night. The front is usually going to get single file quickly, maybe a couple cars spread out relatively quick, especially if someone's able to break the draft like we saw Gold do on that run. And then towards the back, we're going to be seeing everybody stuck in a big bubble that's being, or rather a big air that's being punched by somebody. It's going to be somebody, and it's usually going to be the 2nd or 3rd place car, and then behind, everyone's going to stay about half a second off of each other, just drafting, and it's going to be hard to pass because of that. And I mean, I don't like to call out the package, but this is just one of those racetracks where I really wish it wasn't this one.
Well, yeah, and you can also see some of the consequences from the high downforce package when you look at tracks like Pocono. You see a lot of the other tracks that NASCAR frequently goes to on the schedule. Of course, iRacing does their best, and they do a pretty good job of replicating what these cars really do out on the racetracks each and every time they get down, especially when they developed these NASCAR Cup Series cars and when they implemented the package that was using. Obviously, iRacing has no control over what NASCAR does. NASCAR is free to do whatever they please with their packages, so iRacing obviously replicates that the best way they can. And you mentioned the separation, and you probably what we will see, especially as these open setups start to kick in effect, like we've already seen just a little bit. We've already seen somewhat of a preview, but we've yet to see a long green flag run get in the mix. So it is not answered yet, that question as to whether the drivers up front now on these shorter ones can stay there and maintain their track position, maintain their speed when it comes down to, let's say, 20, 30, 40 laps. There's 75% fuel in these race cars when it comes down to this league itself. So there is a fuel window to go by. There is some sort of fuel window to measure in terms of that sequence. So obviously it is going to be interesting to see whether we do see a long green flag run, maybe spiced in somewhat in the middle of this race. But as of right now, we've yet to see any of that come into real fruition. By the way, just as Francisco mentioned in the chat, if you want to join the conversation with us up in the KBRN booth, you can do so by using hashtag AskKBRN. You can put your question followed by that hashtag, and of course, you'll ask us up in the booth. We'll be sure to answer it just as soon as you send it, and we'll sure to answer it the best way we can. Of course, all within appropriate reason. We're going to get back to a restart on lap number 14. We'll rack them up and do it once more. Gold and Trowbridge still your top two at the front of this field. And we are back under green from the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, still side by side between the two leaders. We'll see if the separation starts to kick in. But now they're going into turn one, almost side by side. Two leaders, they single file out.
Yeah, immediately you can just see this entire top 15 just get single file before turn one. They are not trying to be side by side. I know you see a couple cars back there for fourth side by side, but they're going to settle this one out quick because they're about to, you see right there, that 62 is going to get hung out with that line going to the inside. They're pushing right there because you're going to see they're going to go a lot quicker. One of them's going to give gear in turns 3 because you do not want to stay side by side, and that 62 is going to go way up the racetrack. Probably going to lose the spot here to that 57, and that is the case. So they single file out here. That's all done and worked for. So I think the key to look for these next couple laps is going to be who has the right setup for the right conditions, because most of the leaders have yet to pit in this race because of all the cautions we've had. And you mentioned we have 75% fuel tanks on these cars, and a normal fuel window here will be close to 40 laps. So that's probably 30 laps that these guys can run with, and with all these caution laps, maybe they can go about 35 laps, presumably, depending how much each person respectively was saving. So if we do get a green run here, we're going to see pit stops in about 20 laps, which is still well away. Or if we get a caution, we may see them pit roads if they've almost ran half the fuel run to this point.
That is going to be something to take note of, especially if we continue to go through and if we stay under the green flag from here on out. Obviously, you're taking a look at the cameras right now, just about the battle for 7th on back. Saw Joseph Lester side by side just a little bit with the likes of the 75 of Charles Eaton. Saw a couple guys a little bit further behind. Saw one driver actually pound the inside wall, and that was the number 33 who actually got in there. That was Ed Hawk who got involved. But no yellow, as it seems as though he'll make his way down to the pit lane and he gets out of harm's way. We'll see if we can find some sort of replay and get some sort of measure as to where that came from. We're still under the green, mind you, so no yellow flag. Nobody will be re-racked. This was off of turn number 4 and between the number 6 and the 79 of Gaskins, and it seems as though right into the outside wall sent him and hard damage. That's definitely going to spell some sort of trouble for that number 33, especially now with no yellow, as he's right there on pit road getting his damage fixed. And you look at the battle for the lead, well, it is non-existent, and it has been non-existent for this entire race so far. Gold with a large lead to Trowbridge, and we'll see as it goes. It's about 2 seconds now to Samuelson, as Samuelson has picked up second place.
Yeah, that's unfortunate for the 33. He's losing a lap with that damage. I don't know if he's going to repair it right now or he's already throwing the towel in and just trying to run out there and just hopefully stay one lap down and get a lucky caution or something like that. But if you looked at it really good, he kind of clipped the wall off of turn 4, and that's what got him out of shape, and he couldn't correct it from there. So it's unfortunate from that aspect. You did mention Samuelson did get by Trowbridge for that second spot, so we'll see if Samuelson's able to pull away from Trowbridge and see if that 74 has a short run car. Because as these tires age, maybe it comes down to the setup he has under the car. Maybe he was a little bit better for the initial start of the race, because we did see him keep up for that initial start, and every single restart since, he's just been blown the doors off by everybody else. So well, that's something to keep note of.
Definitely something to keep note of as you're watching Lester, is that he got by David Love for that top 5 spot. He's eagerly going to try to chase down the next guy up ahead in 4th place. That is the number 62 of Jeff Fayette, who we last saw was scooping up to the outside to get out of the way of one of the drivers he was battling with. Here's a little battle, a little bit up ahead. Tom McGee looking at this two-way battle between Lauren Jones and Brendan Biesinger down in the number 18 machine, but it seems as though they've easily situated that specifically. Now the 11 will fall just about 2 positions out of the inside as McGee finds his way to the 13th spot. So we're seeing a lot of things develop, mostly within this top 10, top 15, and you can see even a little further back when we go to 17th, 18th, 19th. Here's Matthew Gaskins fighting with Chad Biesinger, the number 23, for P number 18. So definitely battles worth noting around this 2.5 mile oval, and just a note of how much this 2.5 hour really means. I think we might have had, actually no, never mind. I thought I saw an issue with Thomas Gold. Seems as though he's all up and safe at 2.7 seconds ahead of Ryan Samuelson. But just another thing to note of just about how this track is and just how much this track has gone through. NASCAR racing has been here since 1994 when they first started the first Brickyard 400. That's one of the most memorable moments in NASCAR history. Of course, Jeff Gordon taking that checkered flag and winning that event, and just how prestigious that event was and how it has began to fold over that sort of 25 year stints before now that we're getting massive changes to Indianapolis. We're not even going to the oval anymore on the NASCAR side, and just now the road course being that occupancy once where that Brickyard 400 slot was. And you know, a lot of track with a lot of history, but also innovation. So many years being held at this racetrack, at Indianapolis Motor Speedway, at Indianapolis 500, IndyCar making their way here. Lots of venues at F1 making their way here as well. So lots to be noted of about this track, and it's sort of interesting to see how this track has continued to move forward too. But of course, in the sim, you could visit it anytime you please.
Yeah, Indianapolis Motor Speedway is probably one of the most historic racetracks on the globe. You talk about Indianapolis, and everybody knows exactly what you're talking about. No matter what country you're in, they'll know exactly what this 2.5 mile oval is. They'll know the road course. They'll know all of that. You know, the NASCAR has been coming here since 1994. They've all ran the oval. In 2021, in the NASCAR Cup Series and the Xfinity Series, both are going to be running on the road course. It's the first time the Cup Series is going to be running on the road course. Obviously, IndyCar runs the Indy 500 on the oval, and about a couple weeks before, they run the Indy GP on the road course. Formula One also used to run here in the 2000s, and there's a lot of good history, and there's also not that great history associated with this racetrack, but it's history nonetheless, and we've seen it throughout the years, and it's going to continue to be made. Opened in 1911, well over 100 years old, and here it is still providing some great memories.
And of course, this track will be forever implemented into the iRacing service. There's already a lot of infamous tracks that have been in iRacing that have been implemented. Obviously, take a look at tracks, at least if we talk about United States tracks, we talk about tracks like the Daytona International Speedway and the World Center of Racing. And you go at tracks like, you know, even the short tracks. You go to tracks like Five Flags, go to tracks, and now that have implemented like Nashville, North Wilkesboro, that got implemented just a couple of months back in one of the season patches where they put that out with the 1987 NASCAR Cup Series cars and the Ford Thunderbird and the Chevy Monte Carlo. And then of course you go to the road courses, you go to places like Sebring, go to places like Watkins Glen, go to places all the way in Europe like Spa. You go to a lot of venues around, and especially some of the new venues that they're starting to add, places like Hockenheimring. I know the track in Hungary, the Harango Ring, I believe that's how you say it, correct me if I'm wrong there, and the Red Bull Ring as well, which I know you're very excited for, Francisco. So the legendary things making their way to the iRacing service have been implemented, and they're starting to find their way somewhere as a lot of people start to demand it. It's a lot of fun to drive and a lot of fun to take a part in as the sim continues to grow ever since 2008.
Yeah, I'm gonna correct you on that. It's the Hungaroring.
Hungaroring, there you go.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Rebel Ring being added into the service, and I know it's a bit off of topic of the race right now, as we see Gold has a 3-second lead over Samuelson, but I just want to quickly tap into this. Rebel Ring is my favorite racetrack of all sorts. It's a fun racetrack to drive on, no matter which race car you're in. I've driven with the Indy cars there and Project cars, the Formula One car there in F1 2020. I've driven the NASCAR Cup cars there on Project cars as well. I've used so many different car types there, GT cars as well, and it's just a fun racetrack no matter what you're driving on. And tracks like Rebel Ring, tracks like the Hungaroring and Hockenheim, they all provide such great racing, and they're all in Europe, but they're all fantastic. So I'm a big fan of those additions that are coming up in the next couple months into iRacing, and I will definitely look to spend my money where it belongs.
So look over for third. So things have changed over this longer run. We've had a longer stint. This is so far our longest stint under the green flag this entire night as we eclipse lap number 24 of the 80-lap event here from Indianapolis. You saw third place change. It turned out to be Joseph Lesser. It seemed as though he did catch the 62 of Defayette and also found his way around the 74 of Timothy Trowbridge. So the driver who started in second has fallen back significantly since the drop of the green flag, and especially since this run has started to kick in. So we'll definitely keep our eyes peeled as to where that 74 will be headed, or as to whether anything changes from here on out if we stay green for the rest of the way through. So Samuelson will still be in second as Lester occupies that third spot, but it is all Thomas Gold up at the head of this field, 2.6 seconds over the leaders, and he has not given up. But it seems as though the pit strategy is going to start for that number 97. He's going to find his way down to pit road. Samuelson's going to be in the lead, and the fuel window opens now.
Yeah, it looks as though he was trying to prevent the undercut, because that 81 was actually starting to reel him in a couple tenths a lap for like the last couple laps. And you see behind the leader a couple more cars also coming down pit road, others choosing to stay out. So the strategy is open, and the interesting thing is that you could pit here, take 4 tires, and if you have a good enough stop, you won't lose a lap, which is why the earlier you pit, the better, because if that caution comes out as soon as you exit pit road, you can stay out and take the lead. So obviously Gold is in his bit box right there. He's the #1 stall. Right there is the 81 of Samuelson going into turn 3 now. And as soon as the 97 can get up to speed, if he's able to stay ahead of that 81, which he should theoretically, then he will be in a fantastic seat in this strategy that he's trying to play. But I think that 81 is really low off turn 4, and there he is. He's going to come down pit road 1 lap after the 97. So we'll see who had the better stop and who probably chose the better time to pit. And pitting 1 lap later could definitely help you in terms of the fuel mileage numbers if this goes green, just based on the lap count, as we see the 97 is exiting pit road now.
And there goes Gold. That was pole sitter, so he will lose the race lead momentarily as everyone continues to change hands. Right now, seems as though Seva Corns in the number 16 is your race leader. He is yet to pit, as we did see the number 81 of Samuelson find his way down pit road. He's fallen back to the top 20. See a couple of drivers making their way down to the pit lane. So now things will start to change as we proceed to move through. And right now, the strategy is looking awfully different. What we're seeing, I mean, Cole says down in the YouTube chat, says like a Casey Kane 2017 situation that Francisco, you described, that strategy is always interesting at Indy. And we've seen strategy kick in a lot of times, not only on the NASCAR side, but on the IndyCar side as well. I mean, you look at just how the strategies played out for, I mean, Alexander Rossi back in the 100th Indianapolis 500 in 2016. I remember watching that race on my TV that day in May, and seeing just how tense it was, not only as a viewer, from the viewer standpoint, but watching, like, feeling the perspective of Rossi as a driver and the crew chief, is just to how nervous they are, hoping that they don't run out of fuel, hoping that they don't get caught by the driver behind that did have enough fuel that could push it all the way, and that Rossi was just trying to save, trying to maintain speed, while also trying to save as much fuel as possible to get to that checkered flag. It was only fine to get maybe about 50 feet to the yard of bricks, at least at the end of this race, but even then that could spell a loss. The driver could easily get up to you at the moment. So we're still watching this fuel strategy kick in. We've yet to see Corns go down pit road, and yet to see some of the other drivers behind, such as Johnson, Love, maybe Coffee as well, head down pit road as well. So we've only seen some of the leaders find their way, maybe looking for that undercut further on through. But that could spell a different story, because now the drivers on the fresh tires will now start to cut their way in through the field.
A key thing to point out here, remember, under those first couple cautions, a couple of people did go down pit road, so maybe they have a little bit more fuel and they're trying to run longer. So on top of that, they're extending their run compared to the leaders, and this is probably the strategy they're playing. This is the card they were dealt, and this is the way they're going to play. And going back to the strategy that Cole in the chat did mention, the Casey Kane-like strategy, it's just a simple strategy to play, and we've seen Brad Keselowski do this a lot at Pocono and Indy, because the lap time, he almost got the wall there. But the lap time here is so long for as big of a racetrack this is. You can just pit and you won't lose a lap. You have to be within a delta, and I'm sure you've heard Steve Letarte mention the delta an awful lot during broadcast, but it's just the perfect strategy for these big racetracks. You pit, don't lose a lap, and if a caution comes out, you just won. You won the lottery, and it's a simple strategy. Of course, be within the delta, pit, come out, be in front of the leader, and you're in the perfect position if a yellow comes out. If it doesn't come out, you already guaranteed yourself to stop it, so you just have to go until the next run, try it again.
Everybody within this top 6 have yet to pit. They've gone all 30 laps without looking close to pit road, or at least making their way over to pit road just yet. Maybe it could be different if the 16 finds his way down, and indeed he's going to start slowing down heavy on the brakes, going to find his way into the pit entry cone and the line. There goes the leaders. He needs to be top 3, maybe top 4, maybe up to 6, as now it seems as though the 4 of Coffee was trying to hold it down in order to get there and gain some time on the driver in front, and he might have tagged the wall just a little bit. That's going to add a little more time to his pit road sequence. Going to give his crew a little bit extra to do down pit road. And now the lead will change hands to Chad Sanner, who has yet to pit either, so the top 2 have yet to pit. The driver who's on the lead stint right now is Randy Spivey, the number 22.
And this makes sense. This is about exactly how many laps after they did pit. So them going 5 laps longer than most of those leaders did, it makes sense. And again, if this goes green to the end, it actually could be very crucial. I've been looking at the lap count, the number of laps that they ran, even with the caution laps. If this goes green, those leaders are going to have to pit probably 2, maybe 3 times. But those guys that are pitting now, they do not have to pit 3 times guaranteed. They can probably do it most likely on 2 more stops, especially the people who have yet to pit. So 2 different strategies, and it's going to be interesting to see which one works out, because tires mean a lot, but when you're close together on the racetrack, it's not like Homestead or Atlanta, where if you have new tires, you're just going to go faster than everybody no matter where you're on the racetrack. If you have new tires but you're 40 seconds behind the lead, you're not really going to make that much progress. So the only time tires are really going to significantly matter is if you're packed up on a restart, and right now we're in the middle of a long run, so tires aren't going to matter if this stays green. So the people who are making 1 less stop are most likely going to be in the best position.
And also to compile on that is also just trying to split this run in half. If you can try and get to lap 40, which I don't believe any of these drivers really can do, as there's Kevin Wark, who is the race leader. He's going to find his way down pit road and succeed to Dalton Mobley, who's going to take over the race lead at the Art of Bricks. You can try. You can make that attempt. We could see drivers even try that strategy. They can try to push it to 40, maybe to 39, maybe to 41. And they can. I don't believe it's likely, but they could still do that after saving a lot of fuel. If they're kind of pushing them all the way through that margin, they want to take that route, and they can try and split this run in half, go 40 laps under green flag racing, then go down pit road, take your tires and fuel, then try to run it to the end of the race onto that gas tank and on those tires. That can't really be guaranteed for anything. That has to be somewhat of a strategy that will be very risky for a lot of these drivers. And right now we have an easy battle for some of the positions. At least that was first in some of the lap cars trying to get around. That's the 10 as Mobley finds his way to the outside. The 3 on the fresh tires. There's the difference. Also going to find his way to the inside. At least he's just going to tuck back in behind Mobley. The second place Gaskins just a couple of tenths behind, and Gold filing in to 3rd. But it is definitely going to be interesting if anyone tries to split this run, but so far, nobody has elected that strategy yet. There's only 2 drivers, and it's this top 2, Gaskins and Mobley, that have yet to go down pit road. So we'll just keep an eye on them, try to see what they might do the rest of this stretch, and see how far they can stretch it through. But Gold is definitely catching up.
I don't think that they're going to be trying the one stop, and the reason I say that is based off the fuel fill that they are given. They're about 75%. The average fuel run in the real-life NASCAR Cup Series cars is about 40 laps, give or take. So 75% of that is close to 30, and we've seen these guys go about 25 to 30 laps. So them stretching it to 35 is probably the upper limit. And even if they do stretch 35 laps, we have to consider when did they pit. So you add those 30, 35 laps to try and make it on the upper extreme as to when they pitted. They're most likely going to have to pit a second time very late into this race. But so that's why I make the claim that the 2 main strategies are going to be 2 stops versus 3 stops, and I think we're starting to see which one's going to play out the way it's headed. So we see obviously Gold is going to most likely be on the 3-stop side. Maybe he can do 2. That's the thing. It's going to be really close for these guys if they can do 2. We know the people who pitted about 5 laps ago can do 2 stops. So it's going to come down to can Gold and can everybody on that same strategy pit twice. And if they can't, who's playing their cards right on the 2-stop strategy to go for the win? As we see Mobley and Gaskins pulling off the racetrack, they're going to finally come down pit road on lap 35, probably right on the mark from lap again.
Those are the only 2 drivers who have lasted that long, 35 laps on that stint. Meanwhile, everybody else, also including Gold, who's now taking over the race lead, they have already pitted. So that concludes that pit strategy, that concludes that first initial fuel run. And obviously, Francisco, that does beg the question of how much can you stretch it, and just how you can plan for this fuel strategy. And that's barring that you don't have any yellows from here on out. You don't know whether through the rest of this half we'll start to see yellows. We can get late yellows. We've seen it so many times on the KBueno Racing Network. If you've watched the iRacing Bunch and Lawn Care Series, if you've watched the LWRC NASCAR Cup Series, late yellows are something to watch for. They're definitely not out of the picture anywhere on the spectrum. Even when it looks like it's going to stay green, even when you're about to reach the white flag and you're about to take over a win, you're about to be there by a good margin, yellows can come out and they can change the game completely. They can change the ground up beneath your feet, and they can shift to a whole other direction that you probably were not prepared for. So that's still in that question, but this is just assuming that the green flag will continue to stay through from here on to the rest of this race. And I had kind of a conversation with Cole down there in the YouTube chat. He said, and if the yellow doesn't fly, you're on fresher tires to drive back up through the field. 4 distinct corners means tires will be wearing big time, as we saw in real life in 2009 or 2008. And then he also goes with that, never can rule out a yellow either. Really easy to get sucked up into the wall, mainly off 2 and 4. Meanwhile, there's one driver flipping over to the front straightaway. That's the number 10. I believe that's Chris Cloud in the number 10 Sprite machine. Just mentioned yellow flags. He went for a ride and triggers the yellow flag on lap number 38. And that was right in front of the leaders as well. I'm not sure where this started. Could have started off of turn number 4. But we'll just take a look at this. But this is a wild one to see right in front.
Yeah, that was an insane crash. You see Gaskins gets to the inside of that 10. Oh, and he's sideways. Big time sideways. But actually, that didn't even involve him. I think this 10 tried to go to the inside of 33, and the 33... Oh, he just blocked him into the pit wall. Oh, my gosh.
Oh,
what
wow.
A horrible wreck. Wow. Yeah, I'm not entirely sure what the 33 was doing there with that block. And there was a little bit of space at the end, but I wouldn't block anybody so close, especially on the entry to the pit wall. It's just, yeah, he barely clipped it, and a wild ride. Look at this.
That's hard to really look at from the gyro cam, because that is nauseating in terms of that flip. And that was just a very, it looked like Gaskins probably could have overcorrected. That could have been the result of the incident, but it seems as though Gaskins, that was just a situation all by himself. I'm not sure where the 33 was just trying to block him, maybe get him to the inside wall to kind of scare him a little bit, make sure he tucks back in behind, and then that just results the 10 to go into the pit attenuator, right into the outside wall, and then I believe that was the 3 car that got into him of Steven Dardaris, who got into him. You see him going his way, and then he gets into the 10, And that was right in front of the leaders, mind you. That was right there from Thomas Golden, number 97. If you look on his nose cam, right off of turn number 4, you'll see this incident happen, and you'll see him go flying right in front of the race leader. Just take a look at this.
Yeah, imagine leading the race and you see this happening in front of you. That is not a great sight. Because one, you know the caution's out, but two, that could have easily been you. You could have been that 3 car that had nowhere to go and probably doesn't have a front bumper because of that. So, yeah, it's a strange incident. I'm sure the admins of the league will take a look at that because that block by the 33 was rather questionable. You normally don't see anybody blocking anybody in the entry to that pit wall. Normally you'll see it later on the front stretch, get really close to that pit wall, but normally you do not want to block somebody down to the pit wall by that entry because of that right there. It's that Indy pit wall on the entry has been proven to be quite catastrophic in real life races too. I mean, I think one wreck that comes to mind is I think Danica Patrick and Clint Boyer in an Indy race a couple years ago. I don't know if you remember that, Kenneth, but that was a violent crash in the entry of the pit lane.
Yeah, I think I know what you're talking about. The crash, I believe it was with Clint Boyer, but I think I remember one with, or at least from the view of Kurt Busch. I believe it was a visor cam. Yeah. I'm not sure whether it was that year or that crash specifically that he just kind of saw what happened there, and he was involved in that wreck as one of them went into the pitted road attenuator. Obviously, this year it posed a really big conversation in the Indy 500 where a driver crashed into it. I'm not sure, I don't remember which driver it was that got into contact with that attenuator and that barrier, but then they had a whole conversation about whether they should finish the race under yellow or whether they should try and repair that pit road attenuator barrier there right before the pit lane wall and try to get sort of a 2 to 3 lap run to the finish for the 500. Ultimately, IndyCar did decide that it was better just to keep it under yellow because it was going to take too long for them to repair the barrier, and of course the dangers of having that late race restart, which usually doesn't happen in IndyCar quite too often at a track, especially like the Indy 500. So they decided to hold it under yellow. Takuma Sato was the ultimate winner. So we're going to take a restart here at the halfway mark, lap number 40 of 80. We're looking at lap number 41 as soon as we cross the yard of bricks to take this restart. Gold and Samuelson will be the 2 leaders, and I'm surprised nobody decided to pit on the same footing, so everyone will stay out on this yellow flag. Then Brendan Biesinger, the number 18, will be 3rd. Seba Cornes will be 4th. And we'll see a couple of the drivers down in the top 5. The 23, the 59, and all those drivers a little bit further behind, 2 by 2 all the way down. Kind of an interesting restart here because we're not seeing the 74 of Timothy Trowbridge, who's now sitting 15th. So it is a very different one. He actually just pitted down, so that's the reason he's starting all the way back there. But now that we're at this halfway portion, we'll just take a look at our race summary presented by Supermix. Right now, leader has been Thomas Gold, and that lead has not changed hands apart from the pit strategy in the fuel run. We've only completed 39 laps, still 41 left to go. Oh, and I believe the service just crashed. It was a moment here, I believe something might have happened with the session here. We continue to move forward. Not sure exactly what happened to the session itself. However, we'll try to get this underway. We'll try to get this fixed over for you.
I was able to get the information as far as the crash that you were referring to in the Indy 500. That was Spencer Pigot.
Oh yeah, Spencer Pigot, who went into the pit road barriers there. We're gonna try to get back into the session. We'll try to find our way there. Yeah, we'll try to find our way back into the session. Not sure what might have happened in terms of that sequence there. Just might have been there right there. So we've had some technical difficulties, but we'll just take a short break. You're watching the DBR Cup Series in Sunday Night NASCAR from the Indianapolis Motor Speedway.
coming up to the line, being chased, and it was Braden Johnson. Unbelievable finish. It was 1/1000th of a second between them.
Green flag in the air. We are racing in the 2020 24 Hours of Daytona.
They go door to door for the feature race lead here on the last lap of the race. Side by side for the race lead in the final corner at Homestead.
Down the back straightaway, 3 wide again for the race lead. This is unbelievable stuff here tonight.
Loma is going to have to be very deep on the brakes, and he is very deep on the brakes. It's side by side through the corner. This is for the win.
It'll be side by side. Davies low, Ottinger high. To the very inside is Garrett Low. 4 wide at the stripe. For all his work here on this outside line, neck and neck. Who's going to back out? Does anyone back out? Verstappen starts to squeeze on the inside, and now he'll try and straight line it. Goes under the apron, drag race to the line. It's so close to call.
Welcome back to the virtual Indianapolis Motor Speedway for the DBR Cup Series and Sunday Night NASCAR right here on the KBueno Racing Network. Apologies for our technical difficulties. We've got everything situated out, and we are back under green flag conditions. We took the green flag at about lap number 41. We're still green at lap number 47. You're looking at the race leader, Thomas Gold, who led from the pole tonight and is yet to really be challenged for this race lead, as now a yellow flag comes out. We were just about to mention how the gap was not as big between himself and Ryan Samuelson, but as soon as we got that, we have just picked up the yellow flag once again here tonight. As we'll try to take a look at who might have been involved this time around. Might have been Mitchell Goosens in the number 29 who found his way in trouble. Could have just been there since the start of this race. We'll just try to find our way of who that might have been. So we'll just try to take a look here. Well, we were talking about that strategy, Francisco. We were seeing how that was working out, and we saw just how different it went when Samuelson was actually catching up to the race leader in gold at that time.
Yeah, and this caution is gonna play a different. It's gonna throw a different curve at these guys in terms of strategy, because we saw some guys were able to go just about 30 laps on a fuel tank, and that's about where my guesstimate is as far as how much these guys can run. We're getting a replay here. It looked like 30 laps is probably about what they can run, so it would not surprise me if we see the field come down pit road, and if they make these stops and it goes green the rest of the way, we may not see them back down pit road. So a crucial caution at a crucial time. So we'll see what they do and who does what and what that does as far as the rest of this race goes, because we still have well over 30 laps to go and anything can happen.
They're trying to pick up the yellow flag here. I believe they were slowing it down around this time. So it was one driver near the rear of the field. And it was a 33 of Ed Hawk who went around and actually went up and over. Remember, he was involved in that previous incident that we saw, and you just see him completely toppling over, barrel rolling through the entrance of turn number 3. So that's where the caution was signaled, as he's now down at pit road, and it seems as though some of these drivers are down pit road. Actually, the leaders have found their way down to the pit lane. The number 97 of Gold and the number 81 of Samuelson have made their way down pit road, but Seba Cornes, who was on that different strategy, he stays out along with the rest of these guys behind. So we were just about to mention that, and you told me that, Francisco, but the different strategies that the number 16, the 59, all those other guys had compared to the leaders, and now it is changed on his head. We're going to have a new leader on the next restart.
Yeah, we were just talking about that while we were getting those technical difficulties sorted out. That 16 was on a different strategy than the leaders, and he definitely is now, as he will be the leader of the race on a different strategy. I do not recall exactly which lap number that he pitted on, but I believe he was one of those last couple cars that came down pit road. So he probably has a bit more of fuel in the tank than most people, and I don't know if he pitted under that caution that we had about 10 laps ago. So it's just things like that I'm not entirely sure about. I don't have access to that. Maybe you can check in on that and be able to get back to me when you get the opportunity to do so, because that will definitely be a crucial role as far as the how this race plays out. Because say that there's a caution with 10 laps to go, we may not see Gold and everybody who pitted under this yellow pit again unless it's for tires, and if they don't deem tires to be valuable enough over the track position, they'll stay out, and these guys will have to come in because they don't have enough fuel to go from here to the end, assuming that they pitted on lap 40, but definitely if they didn't any before, because they do not have enough fuel to go to the end of the race.
It's stating over in our timing and scoring that they haven't pitted at all this race, but of course that's not true because they did pit around the lap 30 mark when a good chunk of them have stayed out. Obviously the 16 was one of the drivers who pit later than the rest of the bunch when we saw the drivers in the lead and some of the drivers around the midfield take their way down pit road. We saw these drivers pit a little bit later. There was only 2 drivers that went down the latest, and it was Mobley and Gaskins, but those 2 are sitting 16th, Gaskin is, and then Mobley's sitting all the way back in P20. So that is where they stand, but these drivers kind of pit in the middle around those 2, so it looks like they might have pit around the sweet spot, but we'll just see where Thomas Gold and the rest of those guys start to file in, because Gold is going to be 14th, and you'll see just a little bit further back of the road, Samuelson, who's currently sitting at the moment, he's actually running in the number 8th position, so he's a little bit further up the road. It seems as though he got out before, so it's going to be an interesting shake up here. It's going to be an interesting lineup on lap number 50. There will be 30 laps to go at the start finish line. When we go past on this next restart, it'll be Cornez in the 16 and Chad Sanner in the number 59 that will lead the field. A way different field, and it'll actually be a lead change that we have seen apart as one driver. I think he might have just blown up back there. I think we might have lost one of those drivers a little bit back there, as he had significant damage to his engine. I think it might have just given up at that point. Timothy Trowbridge will be 3rd, Nate Defayette will be 4th, and then Brian Tarnowski and Mike Figueroa will be there as well. So a very interesting restart at hand. We'll see just what happens from here on out in the next 30 laps, whether we see another long green flag strategy or whether we see this thing go all the way to the checkered flag. We'll come off of turn number 4. The pace car will make its way and it's go down to the safety of pit lane. It'll make that sharp left right now. The 16 and the 59 will be the first 2 to lead the field down the long front straightaway. We are back under green on lap 51.
Once again, the first couple rows of cars are trying to get single file immediately. That's just the story of the tale. As we see actually a battle for the lead, that 74 Trowbridge is going to go to the inside. He's going to take the lead away from Cornez.
Cornez will find his way to second as Trowbridge will find his way to the race lead. Another lead change. They're about 3 wide though behind. That's Tarnowski, Figueroa, and Charles Eaton down to the inside of that number 75 Ford Mustang. They'll file out 2 wide and almost contact between the 88 and the 32. They'll keep going 3 wide, more contact. They're wrecking as Eden goes up to the outside wall. We'll see if this stays green or whether anyone else gets involved, but it seems as though from the contact behind, more drivers have been involved. No yellow still on the racetrack. We stay green.
What an insane sequence of what just happened. Wow, that's oh my gosh, like I don't know what to say about that. That was a crazy sequence of events. We saw there were 3 wide going into turn 3, and in the back of my head, while you were commentating that, I was thinking to myself, they need to figure this out before they get into turn 3, and they almost did, but there was contact between 2 cars, and that just set that entire sequence off. So that was an insane sequence of events that I just struggled to describe. That it was just that crazy.
Well, it seems as though we're staying under this green flag. Might be a pass for second developing, though, as Cornez has fallen back from the race lead. He might secede to third, as now Defayette in the number 62 will try to look to the inside. They're still side by side down to the Art of Bricks on lap number 52 of the 80 scheduled laps here for tonight. Looking a little bit further back, that's Chad Sanner in the 59. He started on the outside of row 1, so those 2 have fallen back merely by a couple of spots, as Trowbridge has now extended his lead 2.5 seconds over the rest of this field.
And this goes back to what I mentioned about the package. If you're in the lead and you could just drive away from everybody else, you have nothing to worry about. He drove out to 2+ seconds, just like we've seen Thomas Gold been able to do. So Trowbridge, who was running up front for most of this race early on, we're seeing him back in the lead. We're seeing him in the lead of this race, and he's able to do similar things as that man right there, Thomas Gold, was able to do. Thomas Gold right now running in the 8th spot, I believe that is. So he is inside the top 10 once again after making a pit stop under this last caution. He sees 2 spots in front of him, so the quicker he's able to get by them, the better his chances for the win are should this go green. Of course, we don't know exactly where the strategy is going to fall, when the yellows are going to fall, and when all we can do is just sit here, watch, bring information to you guys, and when the events occur, we can then reassess the information.
And that's Ryan Samuelson, and you made a good point. Those two have just pitted. The 81 and the 97, excuse me. Those two, Gold and Samuelson, went down pit road that last time once we had that yellow flag. So they're on the fresh set of tires as they're trying to make their way to the top 5. Samuelson running in 5th, Gold running in 7th. Here's a pass for 4th, as now the 97 will look under the number 18 of Biesinger, and that number 18 M&M's Toyota Camry, representative of the Kyle Busch paint schemes that we've seen in the 2020 season. There the two go down to the inside. They're going to find their way around, and now the question is, how long will it take until Samuelson and Gold get up to the top 2, or at least try to challenge for this race lead? Because you have fresh tires now, but over the course of the run, if it stays green, that's not going to really last long. You're going to start wearing out very soon.
Right now, they're both running in 4th and 5th respectively, and easily gaining on Cornez with help of the draft as well. You see that 81's using the fresher tires to his advantage. Again, I mentioned the fresher tires are going to be so useful on a restart because that's when everyone's at their closest. So right now, you see right behind that 16, he's going to try and get the draft off the front straightaway. I'm not sure if he can make a move into turn 1, but if he doesn't go immediately, he's going to be having all sorts of pressure from that 97, and he may already be having it with this bumper view. I'm not exactly able to tell, but I'm sure that he's getting all that pressure. You see that 16 unable to hold the bottom, and he's just going to go right by him, and so will the 97 just also go by on that inside. So move those duo up to 3rd and 4th, and they're going to continue to work/race each other as they continue to move towards the top 2.
He said the pressure was there from the 97, and indeed it is, because they have closed in significantly. Those two, some of the fastest that we've seen on the racetrack tonight, along with Trowbridge, who did fall back early in that run. Now the 97 might peek his nose to the inside, might decide to do it going into turn number 1, try to get that momentum off the final corner into this long front straightaway that obviously could be set up easily for a lot of these corners, especially when you get that good amount of draft to your benefit. Right now, gap from 2nd place to the leader is about 2 seconds flat, maybe 2 seconds and change between Trowbridge and Defayette. But that 3rd place car, 4th place, 5th place, all 3 of them making their charge, and it's going to be a little bit before they get up to the race leaders, but that time is ticking down.
Yeah, the 2nd place driver, Defayette, has slowly been reeling in the leader as, I don't know, it looked like he had a little bit of a problem there off that corner. It looks like he lost a bit of time in turn 2. I'm not sure if he had a moment there or not, but definitely you can tell the gap between 2nd, 3rd, and 4th, it definitely closed up as we see a massive pack of cars here. They're trying to figure this out. There's no contact between 2 cars on the inside, and there's going to be contact right there. They're sideways, but they're going to hang on to that. So a close call in the back side of the field.
As though they're okay. You see Joseph Lesser, Josh Cochran on that mix as well. Saw J.C. Gibson in the number 27. He had a little bit of moment off of turns 3 and 4 in that short shoe right in between those 2 corners. But it seems as though we're okay. We stay green flag racing. No incidents between those drivers. But it is a gaggle of cars from about 14th on back until you get to that. But this is brewing up for 2nd here. Now the 62 of Defayette has charges from all 3 of these drivers up here, the 2 Mustangs and the Toyota Camry. All 3 of them have been going at this field together as they all went down pit road on that last yellow. They have been all making this trip to the front together. Now they separated. It's now Gold to 2nd. He's going to try to chase down the 74 up front.
Crucially, Gold got past that 81 car, so that was a crucial pass that we weren't able to capture, but that is crucial because those 2 are on the same strategy. So interesting situation there with Thomas Gold getting past Samuelson for the second spot now, as they both simultaneously pass the 62, as the 18 now moves up into the fourth spot. So the three of these drivers have been moving up relatively together, and right now they're in the 3 spots behind that leader. So you see right now Trowbridge has a 2-second lead or so over Thomas Gold. I would not expect it to stay at 2 seconds for much longer.
No, it was about 2.129 that last time around, and as we get the scoring now, it's about 1.1, so that is deteriorating very, very quickly. You can imagine Trowbridge is looking into his rearview mirror. He's seeing that fellow Mustang starting to grow larger and larger, and he's probably thinking about what his next move is, as these three will probably barrel past him, and they will probably occupy the top 3 spots with just 20 laps to go from the virtual Indianapolis Motor Speedway. So far, Gold has been the dominant driver. Trowbridge has taken this lead momentarily, but off turn 2, here comes the 97 for first.
I would not be surprised if this 97 takes the lead before the end of this lap. You see, he has a big run down the back straightaway. The question is, does the 74 make a defensive move? Does he give him the lane? There he goes. Thomas Gold going to the inside for the lead. No contest from Trowbridge, and Thomas Gold will go back to the race lead.
There's Samuelson and Biesinger. Those 3 have been on a mission since that green flag signaled that lap number 41. So now the lead has changed hands. It'll probably change hands for second and third, maybe even further back, as you're looking at further battles between the 62 of Lafayette and David Love in the 70, who started his way through. I believe he's also on the same route and the same strategy as these top 3. Maybe not as much speed to his advantage, but those tires are certainly going to his benefit. So they are also carving through this field. It's yet to be determined for second, so it's all these top 4 with a breakaway by a couple of seconds.
Cornez actually went down pit road this last lap. If he's able to go to the rest of this race without having to pit again, making that pit stop, we may see him. There he is right there. He may come out just ahead of these leaders or just behind. He was pretty far back and losing a lot of time, so we're not sure exactly where he's going to emerge relative to the leaders, but we do know he's going to be within the vicinity. So a tough break that he wasn't able to get the caution he was hoping for, to have to pit under the yellow flag and hopefully be able to replicate what we've seen Thomas Gold and the rest of these leaders been able to do. You see him right there exiting pit road, and he will get lapped. So unfortunately, he lost a lot of pace, and I think he has a little bit of right side damage. I'm not sure. Looked like the right front tire was sticking out just a little bit, and yeah, he's gonna lose a lap. But the good thing for him is they will have these fresher tires, and he has the leaders in sight. So not all is lost for him. He is in the free pass position. As we see a car sideways, that is the number 3. He emerges onto the racetrack, does not make contact with anybody. I wonder what happened there, but as of now, it looks as though it's back under control.
It seems as though he hit the outside wall, heard that contact between him and the safer barrier up in turn number 1, at least on the exit going into the short chute, but luckily he's able to keep it straight, and he does lose that position to Mark Figueroa in the number 88, and that is the battle at least for 12th, 13th, as there's Dalton Mobley a little bit further back in 15th. Meanwhile, for the race lead, it has already changed hands, but it's already changed for second. Trowbridge has fallen back significantly, and actually, speaking of which, he's going to make his way down pit road to make his way all the way to the end of this race. The question stands, how long does Samuelson, Gold, and the rest of these guys maintain themselves out on the racetrack? Because they pitted around that 40, around the halfway mark when we got the green flag on lap number 41. Where does this stand?
Yeah, it's looking to me like I'm able to see what this strategy is going to come down to. So there's going to be a group of cars that are going to have to pit before the end of this race. They're all either going to be hoping for a caution, or that this has to go green, and these leaders having pitted that last caution, that they just don't have enough to make it. We don't know, and we won't know, but what we do know is that a caution does come out, it will shake up this order, as these guys will have older tires relative to the guys who are just pitted, and maybe they will replicate what we have just seen. As we see actually that 16 car who had just gotten lapped 2 laps ago exiting pit road, and he was behind the 4th place car, he just storms past the leader. So that right there is the tire information that we need if there's a late restart and these leaders are on old tires staying out for the track position, and these guys that have just pitted, if they able to play the strategy to what they're hoping it becomes.
I think a correction there, these guys have pitted a little bit later than lap number 41, so it's been a little bit it's been a little shorter than what I mentioned that first time around, so apologies for that mistake. But nonetheless, I think it might be a little bit tight on fuel, maybe a little bit close on the tank, as you see the battle for second now heating up as Biesinger is caught up to the number 81 of Samuelson. They did get by the number, I believe it was about the number 74 as he went down pit road. And 70 of David Love was also here in fourth. Defayette will still hold on to fifth, but it might be still close down on the fuel range, especially since we have about 15 laps to go. It's still going to take a while, and these laps do wear the fuel down a lot more as it is a larger track. 2.5 miles with the long straightaways where you're on the gas. There's not as much time. There's not as many opportunities, Francisco, to save, especially compared to tracks, let's say the 1.5 miles, like I'd say Charlotte, Homestead, maybe Kansas, Chicago. Those types of tracks where you can be off the throttle, you can save some of that gas in the meantime. But at Indianapolis, you have to do a lot of it in the corners, but at the same time, you're not really lifting as much. You're not really off the gas as much throughout these corners as you expect.
Yeah, 2 points to make here. We saw this happen in one of the playoff races this year. Kyle Busch was forced to save fuel the entirety of the last run of the race, and he was able to do it, barely finishing about a second ahead of Martin Truex Jr. So the strategy, even at a difficult place to save fuel like Indianapolis, where it's hard to save fuel because you're always full throttle, it can work. As actually the second and third place cars, Bosnier and Samuelson, they've been drafting together and catching up to Thomas Gold. So instead of trying to race each other, they're actually helping each other catch the leader once again. So an interesting thing to note there. But another thing, my second point that I was going to make, these three pitted, I believe, on lap 48 or 49, which is about 32, 33 laps to go. So that's really stretching it on the fuel mark. So unless that 97 is saving fuel, actually, we're not exactly sure what the situation with these top three are. What we do know is everybody who's pitted ever since can definitely be.
Could be a signal that the leader is saving because the gap has shrunk. It's now 3/10. Now 3/10 between second place Samuelson and first place Gold. So you mentioned they're about stretching it on fuel, and I did mention that's why they didn't pit on lap number 41. They pitted a little bit later on about lap number 48 when that yellow came out at that time that involved the 33 machine. And that's why they all three went down pit road. They lost that track position, but they carved through the field to get all the way back up here. And now with 13 laps to go, it's going to cut it close because already some drivers a little bit further behind are at least, or should be, good on fuel. Obviously, Timothy Trowbridge, who pitted a couple laps earlier, he's good on fuel. The drivers like the 16, Esteban Cornes, he's good on fuel as well. A lot of these drivers around the 13th or at least the 10th to 15th place mark, those drivers have already pitted. Those drivers seem to be okay on gas, and they are sure to make it all the way to lap number 80. But it is questionable when you get to this top three and when you get to maybe even the top 5 or so, as actually almost the top 8, as Coffey has also been about 19 laps on his stint. It is very, very close, and it's going to cut it very, very close on that end, especially as these three are going to start to climb up together. But one thing to also know is that you mentioned the 18 was drafting up to that number 81 instead of trying to pass him. And of course, you mentioned how passing at this track, especially with the long straightaways and the draft, could really lose you time. When you're drafting all the way back to a car like this, you can save fuel. You can not be 100% on the throttle compared to when, let's say, you're all the way by yourself up in the front like Gold is at this moment. When you're behind him, you can easily draft him. You can lay out the throttle a little bit, and in turn, you could save a little bit of fuel, whether it be a couple of drops or whether it be a little more if you stay there a couple laps longer. But at places like Daytona, it's worked. At places like Indianapolis, where you have that draft to your benefit, those drops mean everything in the long run.
And we saw evidence clear as day on that on the front straightaway. We saw a car just go up there and absolutely blow by the three of them by themselves as they were all nose to tail. So there is evidence that these three are saving fuel because they're committed to this strategy. If they pit, they've lost too much time to the people that have pitted on those new tires to where they won't be able to make it up because the difference just won't be there with the laps left. So these top 3, top 4, maybe even top 5, they're all committed to this strategy. They're hoping that it goes green and that they do have enough fuel. But if they don't have enough fuel, they're hoping for a caution so they have an opportunity to come down pit road and at least make a charge with everybody packed up. So 11 laps to go, and this race is far from over.
Yeah, This race is definitely far from over. And if we have a yellow, boy, that will change the landscape once again. We'll have another thing to worry about. These drivers will have something more to worry about. Maybe not too much, but they would have to maybe go down pit road, or they'll just have to bank on just staying out. And that will be a fork in the road for a lot of these drivers. And now the Samuelson machine, the 81, tries to get around the inside to Thomas Gold, does not make it stick. He's going to file back and tuck in to second place. But you did mention it correctly. They're already too long in the strategy. They're too far gone. They're already committed, and they're so deep in the strategy that if they want to go down pit road, there's going to be not enough time to try and get back up to the front of this field, because around that mark on the halfway portion, or lap 48, when they had that yellow flag and they went down pit road, they probably knew they had enough time. They probably had that in mind, that they would have a good amount of laps. They would have a good stretch of maybe a green flag run to make their way to the lead, comfortably set themselves in like they are in right now, and maintain themselves all the way to the end of this race. Now that they're here with about 9 laps to go in this race, they can't do anything else. They have to stay with the strategy. It's either that or bust, as you saw a challenge for the race lead and a pass for the race lead as the 81 of Samuelson got by Gold as we are approaching the final laps of this race.
It's actually for the second position, because David Love is not trying to save fuel. He just absolutely passed everybody and is now leading this race. So he is accepting that he can't go the entire distance on the tank, or maybe he can, we don't know, but him not saving fuel is most likely indicating that he's going to run it dry and he's going to pit when it's starting to stumble. So a different strategy by the 70 than the rest of these guys. He's not going conservative any bit. He's just going full foot to the floor, hoping that it goes as far as it possibly can. So we'll see how that works out for David Love. He's pulling away big time from the rest of these guys who are saving big time in the draft. And as you mentioned, Samuelson did get past Gold. They have about 30 seconds back to the first driver who pitted, I believe. Yeah, 35 seconds back from the race lead is the 16 car. And normally a pit stop loss is 45 seconds. They're about 6 seconds behind the leader, so they've lost 15 seconds already on a combination of new tires and trying to save fuel. So as the laps continue to go, that difference just becomes all the more of a reason to not pit. So these guys are 110% committed to the strategy of saving fuel and hoping that it's, one, enough to make it, and two, enough speed to where they can beat the people who did pit. But David Love right now in the lead, coming to 7 laps to go. I wonder what his situation is like, because he has a big lead. What if he tries to save at the last second with a big lead? Or what if he already has enough fuel? Or what if he doesn't? We just have no idea what's going on here.
When you're looking at this, as you're on board, you're running along with the number 70 of Love. I believe he's on the same stint as these guys, so he's changing it up compared to everyone else. While Samuelson, Gold, and Biesinger, everyone behind are practically saving, that number 70 of Love is maintaining his ground, and he is full-fledged to the floor all the way to the end of this race. But that could pose something different if he runs out of fuel. It just depends on where he runs out of fuel, because if he continues to grow this gap, if it continues to grow too large, the distance that has to be made up between Samuelson and catching up to Love, if he runs out of fuel, could be too much going to the line. But that just depends on where that 70 runs out of fuel, because if he runs out of fuel maybe off of turn number 1, then he'll probably come to a stop around turns 3, turns 4, maybe even around that short chute, and he might not have enough time to get over to pit lane and try to splash in some gas and just try to finish this race the best way he can. So we'll try to monitor this as we're coming up to 6 laps to go for the virtual Indianapolis Motor Speedway. You saw that pass for a second as Samuelson got around Gold. They're still tagging in along together, but now they're getting spoiled by the guys of Kevin Rourke and Dalton Mobley, who are finding their way by. Some lap cars are also cutting into the mix. So it is a large pack of cars here where the drivers in 3rd, 4th, 5th, and also even 2nd place are concerned. And now Rourke, who's also on the same strategy as Love, is going to try and push this thing to the end. He's not saving at all.
Trowbridge is not too far behind this group, so if I'm the people of this group who are trying to save fuel, they need to start going now. These guys, Love, you see he's a little bit offline there, but Love and, as you mentioned, Mobley, they're all trying a different strategy of not saving, and they've gone to this point with 5 laps to go and they're still under power. There's no signs of them running out of fuel. So if there's no signs of them running out of fuel with 5 to go, and we've seen the amount of fuel that these other triplets have been able to save, despite the big gaps they have, maybe they have enough to go to the end. And if they do, they need to start going now. Otherwise, they're all going to get passed by Trowbridge, and they're all going to lose this race by just driving too conservatively. So a 15-second lead over Mobley, actually, and they're all getting passed. These are not lap cars. These are all for position.
Yeah, that was Mobley and Kevin Rourke who found their way by of 2, 2nd, and 3rd. So now it's their mission to try to cut into this lead. It's 14 seconds. It's a lot to ask, but it can still be done with 5 laps to go. And off of turn number 4, Love is going to cross the start-finish line. Actually, he's going to go down pit road. It is over for the 70 of Love. He's going to head down pit road. That'll give the lead over to Dalton Mobley in the number 77 as he's going to make his way off turn 4. Question is, will those drivers also find their way down pit road as well? The answer will still be no. One driver to the outside wall, a little bit further behind, but it seems as though he'll stay out of harm's way. Actually, no, he'll be wrecking down the front straightaway, and we have a yellow flag with 5 laps to go from Indianapolis. That was Tom McGee in the 47 and went around, and it seemed as though he was going to go down left into the pit lane and stay out of everybody's way, but he went around in the middle of the straightaway, and we have a yellow flag. Boy, this changes everything. We'll take a replay and see exactly what happened.
That was so perfect for David Love. He was on pit road in his pit box as soon as the caution came out, so that couldn't have been a better timed caution for him. I think he's the only person that's really happy about this, because I think he's much happier than these other guys who were saving. They'll get a chance to pit nonetheless, but they're going to lose their track position doing so. David Love can stay out, probably with the rest of the guys. You see McGee actually got really tight there, and you see putting more wheel into it and hitting the wall, and was unable to keep the car straight after that. So unfortunate for him, but we were talking about it. The fuel was going to be close, and right now it looks as though we're going to enter overtime at Indianapolis.
We're going to be heading into overtime as we had 4 laps to go just as that yellow flag came out. Here are the leaders. There's Mobley, there's Rourke, Samuelson, Gold, Trowbridge, everyone making their way down pit road. Where does David Love come out? Since he just pitted, he's going to stay out on this strategy, and this is going to be pivotal into how this race ends. And as to how we find out who wins this race tonight in Sunday Night NASCAR. You see these guys already going down pit road. There's Samuelson, Gold. They were all saving on that last run. Good thing for them is they won't have to save anymore, but they'll probably be at a little bit of a disadvantage as some of these drivers will go out and stay out. Actually, this will be interesting as you see. There's Nicholas Breidenbach in the number 6, the one of Josh Mayu, Joshua Johnson, Chad Biesinger. Remember, these guys pitted a little bit earlier. So we'll just see how everything shakes out, because some drivers may go down pit road the next time by. There's David Love. He's currently scored 5th on the pylon, but that obviously could change should these drivers go down pit road. None of them are listed as a lap down at the moment, but that could change very, very quickly. Right now, Breidenbach is your net P1. Boy, this is going to be intense, because now we have 2 different things to watch for. We have these guys who have stayed out, and these guys who have been on different strategies all night long, and then you're going to get to the drivers who are pitting right now, but in the sense of Mobley, Rourke, Samuelson, Gold, and all those drivers that will now have to cut their way through the field again. But the question is there enough time to do so?
It's going to be tough to do it if you're outside the top 5. Right now, the person in the best spot is going to be David Love. He was on pit road when that caution came out. You and I, the reaction was clear enough. We were disappointed for him that he had to pit with 5 laps to go, but the thing is, it was perfectly timed for him. That caution couldn't have worked better for anybody else in the position that he was in. You see a couple cars here maybe trying to fake on the pit road. One of them will come down. I believe it's a lap car though, so they're going to come across the start-finish line, either 2 to green or 1 to green. I'm not exactly 100% sure, but either way, David Love is going to cycle out into the top 5 positions, I believe. and he's going to have much newer tires than most of the other competitors that are leading this race. So advantage David Love in that aspect. Advantage the race leader, Breidenbach, because he has the track position that we've talked about all night that matters. With 2 laps to go, all you have to do is just stay in front of him and hope that the other guys that are on old tires like you can hold them up long enough to where you can edge him out. It doesn't matter how much you win by, it depends, are you the one that wins?
So here is a look at these stints as we cross the start-finish line. For 1 to go, well, it stated it was about 12 laps for Breidenbach since he pitted, 13 for Mayu, 12 for Chad Biesinger in the number 23. For Joshua Johnson, it's been 11 laps. For DeFayette, it's been 10. And for David Love, it's been 2. So we will be doubled up behind Breidenbach and Mayu, the 6 and the 1. 2 Camaros will be leading this field to the green flag. If you're looking at where everybody else who just pitted now are at, the first driver you'll find is Timothy Trowbridge in 10th, Samuelson 11th, Mosley 12th, Gold Pole Sitter is in 14th. A lot of drivers to get through, but there could still be some hope left to try and capture a victory in the second race of this round of 12. We'll come off of turn number 4, where the pace car will make that sharp left and will soon be green flag racing what could be the final time tonight from Indianapolis Motor Speedway. There goes the pace car, going to make its way down to the safety, and here comes Breidenbach. Green flag back in the air for what could be the final restart of the evening.
Bit of a delayed start there. They're already going 3 wide, a little bit further back. This is tires versus no tires. There's a big wheel spin by one of those cars on the outside. They're all over the place on the front straightaway, trying to get as much ground as they can into turn number 1. David Love there on the inside, going for 4th position, maybe going to try and go for 3rd. I think that's Timothy Trowbridge right there, who's already up inside the top 10. So what a great restart for him, and almost contact as they're all over the backstretch. Oh, everyone's trying to keep it clean. David Love got a little bit tight. Off turn 4 is there contact between Samuelson and David Love. They're both around into the inside. No caution.
No yellow as it was below the grass and below the racing surface. Meanwhile, we have a battle for the race lead. Here comes Joshua Johnson to the inside of the number 6. He'll take over the race lead off turn 4, and we will take the white flag. No yellows out. We will stay green from here on out. White flag from Indianapolis. They're 4 wide, a little bit further behind. Mayu trying to look for the race lead as well. Biesinger down into 3rd. What will happen from here on out?
It's a 2-horse race unless they both take each other out. But right now, Johnson in the 57 in the lead from Mayu in the 1. Can Mayu get a draft off of it? There's a big crash in turn number 2. Multiple cars stopped in the middle of the racetrack. Well, let's try and get this battle for the lead, though. The number 1 is going to try and get as close as he can. They're 4 wide, almost for that 3rd spot. Let's see what happens into 3 for the final time. The 1 is right behind him. Does he have enough time to get to the back of that 57 and make a move before it's over? One last chance into turn number 4. Does he have enough of a run to pass him before the start-finish line?
Trying to get to the front straightaway, but it's all the 57. No time for Mayu. Joshua Johnson will win at Indianapolis Motor Speedway in a final lap dash for the ages in the capital, in the racing capital of the world, as Mayu did not have enough time to dig up a run. Up his sleeve, saw a lot of drivers involved in incidents further back in this field off turn 4, and there was a lot to discuss as there was a wreck down the back straightaway between David Love and Samuelson. Another wreck off turn 2 involving multiple drivers, including Biesinger in the number 18. And then a final crash off of turn number 4, but it was not enough to trigger any yellow. They took the white flag before, and Joshua Johnson comes out as your winner from Indianapolis. Mayu into 2nd. Dalton Mobley will capture podium finish in 3rd. Seba Cornez will finish in 4th place, and Nate DeFayette will round out this top 5. As Johnson gonna go down the front straightaway. There's a couple of drivers there to help him out, at least engage with the celebration. There's a punt by Matthew Gaskins, but nonetheless, the 57 of Johnson will burn it down in front of the yard of bricks as he wins tonight. What a run to that finish, and such heartbreak on either end of the spectrum, Francisco. We saw hope for a lot of these drivers. We saw heartbreak for drivers like Love and Samuelson, but the spotlight's all on that 57 tonight.
Yeah, a good win for him. He made that move in turn 4 coming to the white flag, and he was able to clear him before they came off the corner onto the straightaway, and he was just able to have enough power under the hood to where that one car could not make a run at him. And of course, you can't talk about these other guys that were on that different strategy that had hearts broken here tonight. Unfortunate turn of events for them, but sometimes things go your way, sometimes things don't, and those are the unfortunate things of racing. But a good win for that 57 team.
So the 57 will capture a win. We'll take a look at your full unofficial race results from the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Of course, Joshua Johnson will take his win in this season in the number 57 machine over Josh Mayu. Was 0.211 seconds between the two, and Mayu did not have enough to catch up to the leader. Dalton Mobley, who had pitted with the rest of this field, it looked like he was in a spot to win this race. He manages for third. Seba Cornes, who we have talked about all night long on that different strategy and some damage, he will hold on for P4. That top 5 spot will belong to the 62 of Nate DeFayette. Thomas Neal will come home in 6th. Matthew Gaskins will finish in 7th. Chad Biesinger in the number 23 will be 8th. 9th place will belong to Mark Figueroa in the 88. And rounding out this top 10 is the number 3 of Stefan Darderes.
Looking back at the rest of the finishers, well, not the rest, but the 11th through 20th, we have the 18 of Brendan Balsenior, who was involved in that one of those last lap crashes. He was one of the guys we were talking about late in that race. Timothy Tobridge also there in the 12th spot. Ryan Samuelson in 13th. You see this group all together, 14th being Thomas Gold. Kevin Rourke finishes in the 15th position. Joseph Lester in 16th. Nicholas Bryanback, who was the leader on that last restart, finishes 17th, one lap down. Barrett Coffey finishes in 18th. Josh Carpenter finishes in the 19th position, and rounding out the top 20 is JC Gibson.
From 21st on back, David Love, after being involved in an incident with Ryan Samuelson, he'll finish one lap down. In that spot, Randy Spivey, who was the points leader in the playoffs going into tonight, a rough night for him. 22nd for the 22 machine. Brian Tarnowski will be 23rd. Tom McGee, who got into that incident around the 4 lap to go mark, he was 24th. 25th belongs to Chad Sanner in the 59. Ryan Seneca in the 19 will finish 26th. Dean Weeks will come home in the 5 in 27th. 28th belongs to the 93 of William Fink. 29th to the 60 of Steve Giberson. And rounding out the top 30, that number 75 of Charles Eden.
And here's the remaining drivers to finish here tonight. 31st being Lauren Jones. Jeffrey O'Rourke being in the 32nd position. Marty Roberts being in 33rd. Jeff Carson, one of the playoff drivers, not a great run for him, in 34th. Chris Claude, another playoff driver, 35th. Mitchell Goosens finishes in the 36th position. Ed Hawk finishes 37th. And last today is going to be Kavaya Holt in 38th.
So that is your entire field here from Indianapolis. We'll take one short break and we'll be back with our KBRN post-race coverage brought to you by SDC. We'll have interviews of the top 3 and all of our ending thoughts to cap off tonight's DBR Cup Series race from the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Don't go anywhere. We've got more coming next.
It's the thirstiest time of the year. Hey. I have just one query.
Want a Sprite cranberry?
The answer is clear. It's the thirstiest time of the year. Sprite, let's go.
Welcome back to the virtual Indianapolis Motor Speedway, where we kick off our KBRN post-race coverage, brought to you by SDC for the DBR Cup Series and Sunday Night NASCAR. And what a finish we had. It took a yellow with 4 laps to go to re-rack the field on a green-white checkered restart, and it was all Joshua Johnson who would take the lead from there, and he is your winner tonight after those final restarts. And what a run all the way to the finish. A bunch of wrecks to couple with, but nonetheless, we do have a winner at the end of tonight. We'll try to get Joshua Johnson in as we're going to go over to victory lane. And Joshua, you ran away with it at the end there. It was all that mattered. Those final laps after you took the lead from Josh Mayu in the one. Walk us through your perspective as you were going by for the race lead and what you felt you needed to do in that last restart.
Yeah, I was afraid to see that caution come out, but getting on that restart, Josh is my teammate, so we were in a channel together, and he told me he was going to give me the room on the inside, and we were going to push each other past the 6, and he didn't get a great restart, so he backed up a little bit, and I knew the 6 had damage, so I got down the back straightaway, and I knew I just had to suck up right to him. Went to try to go on the inside, and he blocked me. I lit off the first time, and gave him a shove, let him know, and I was like, the second time's not going to be a let off. So he seemed to give me a little room going into 3 there, and once I got on the inside of him going into 4, I just had it the last lap.
You definitely made that move, and you made it the right way, and you hold on for this win here at Indianapolis. And just walk us through this race. I know it was all about strategy. Strategy seemed to play the biggest factor, and I'm sure in your mind it was a concern when we were going through those green flag runs. What seemed to be the biggest step in terms of that green flag run to ensure your move all the way to the front and to ensure you were able to make it to the end of this race safely?
Yeah, our car, my setup there is not great the first 3 laps. It takes a couple laps to come in, so I knew that a long green flag road would actually be good for us, and I ended up getting in the wall a little bit there early and had to get some damage fixed, so I got shuffled to the back, and I knew that if I, after that long green flag run, that if I just pitted right at the end of my run, I was going faster than most of the guys that would have pitted early. So I was just trying to get the strategy to play out the way I wanted it to, and didn't want to see that caution, but it still worked out for us in the end there.
It worked out for you. Capture the victory here, Joshua. But before we let you go, is there any sponsors, any teams, or really anyone you just like to give the love and shout outs to here in victory lane at Indianapolis?
Yeah, a shout out to the Sunday night league here. They put on a great show. I think they're doing a good job. This is only my second race actually going with them, but they're doing a great job for what I've seen so far. Shout out to Driven Cloud. That's my sponsor. My brother owns a company that makes decals and things for cars. It's a great company. You can go check them out on Facebook. And thank you guys for jumping on board and broadcasting for us. Doing a great job.
Well, Joshua, we certainly appreciate the support, but our congratulations go over to you on an exhilarating win here from the virtual Indianapolis Motor Speedway. We look forward to seeing what you can do for the rest of the season, but for now, we'll let you go celebrate your win here tonight.
Will do. Thank you. Have a good night.
That's Joshua Johnson, your first place finisher, your winner from Indianapolis in that final run to the finish. We're going to try to catch up with Josh Mayu in the number 1, but I don't believe he is anywhere to catch with us. So we'll step back to 3rd. We're down on pit road. Dalton Mobley is with Francisco Bacallao.
Dalton Mobley, this is Francisco in the KBRN booth. You got me? Try that again. Dalton Mobley, this is Francisco in the KBRN booth. You got me?
I got you.
So it was an extremely active race from everybody, with strategy being the focal point. What was your strategy going into the race?
Oh, it really was laid back. I didn't really race up front until towards the end of the race. It gets kind of crazy towards the front sometimes in these races, so mine was just conserve.
Yeah, you mentioned that you were up front towards the end of that race. We saw what looked to be a fuel mileage race playing out at the end. What was your what position were you in those closing laps?
Before the yellow came out, I was leading. Then the yellow came out, and by the time I pitted and everything shuffled around, I came out 12th.
And then the final caution came out with just a couple of laps to go, and it shook up the whole field. I don't remember exactly where you restarted, but I imagine it was a great restart on your part and great driving to get you up to this third place finish. Could you walk us through that final restart?
Yeah, when I went in the pit, I'm a big gamble guy, so I gambled, put on 80% tape, which is the max, and changed some tire pressure. So I restarted, I think 13th, and the final restart, it started off pretty slow. I think the guys in front of me were on old tires. I think one guy spun his, I think, on the restart, and it got very, very congested. I think we were 4 wide at one point, and I had so much tape on that it really didn't matter, and drove myself all the way up to third. I think one more lap, I think I would have caught the leaders and passed them, to be honest with you.
Well, it was a strong P3 effort after an interesting day of racing at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Is there anybody you want to thank, any team members, sponsors, or just anybody in general?
Yeah, I just want to thank God, man, for this opportunity to race and do what I love to do, man. That's it.
It's great hearing from you, and we hope to see you out at the next race. Thanks for talking to us.
You too, man. God bless you.
That's Dalton Mobley, your second place finisher here from Indianapolis. I don't believe we have anyone from the top 5. I believe Josh Mayu is not in any of the voice chats that we've seen. Seba Cornez is also not there as well. I think the person or the driver, at least all the way further back, it seemed to be Matthew Gaskins in the number 79 who finished in that 7th spot. I think that's really going to cap it off from here in terms of our interviews, at least on the pit road. Francisco, we saw our first race of Sunday Night NASCAR, and we certainly were not disappointed whatsoever after what we saw. And that fuel strategy, the yellows, the excitement, and all the racing, and of course that final restart with Joshua Johnson took the race lead and eventually won this race.
Yeah, we were constantly active trying to keep ourselves up with the different strategies that everyone was trying to use. I was like Steve Letarte, trying to make sure I have the right numbers, the right people on the right strategy. It was an insane thing to keep track of, but I feel like for the most part I was able to sort of keep track of it enough to where I wasn't too confused on what was going on the racetrack. But you like that about this sort of racetrack, because it won't give you the type of passing or racing that you probably will get at a traditional mile and a half, or that you would with the different package. But you do get these strategy races, which are so interesting because it's a long game. You never know what's going to happen until it actually happens, and it's part of also being a Formula One fan, knowing that that's exactly how those races will play out. But it's still an interesting aspect to see it, especially at a track like Indianapolis. So today was a great race. I'm glad I was able to bring it to everybody who was watching alongside with you, and I can't wait to get another opportunity to cover Sunday Night NASCAR with you.
And the next race for Sunday Night NASCAR will take place at Hotlanta at the Atlanta Motor Speedway. Certainly going to be a very different challenge. Of course, seeing the 2.5 mile track here tonight, going all the way back to a slick 1.5 miler, and that's definitely going to be very different from what we see here tonight. And maybe the same over at Fuel Strategy, but probably could still bring the excitement as we move through to this round of 12. Well, that wraps things up for our broadcast on the KBueno Racing Network here for Sunday Night NASCAR and the DBR Cup Series. For everybody that makes this possible, for Chris Claude for bringing us on in and giving us a shot at broadcasting this league, we certainly appreciate it, and we'll be sure to bring the best sim racing action for you right here on the KBueno Racing Network until we get to the championship race. And pretty much for all of us here at the KBueno Racing Network, and for all of you watching at home, watching on the YouTube chat, we certainly appreciate the support. And on behalf of us at the KBueno Racing Network, for Charlie Baier, our main producer, and for my colleague in the booth, Francisco Bacallao, Kenneth Bueno, saying good night from Indianapolis and the racing capital of the world. We will see you at Hotlanta coming up next week as we continue these grueling playoffs.